Hi, everyone.
Hi, beautiful people. Happy Friday.
Yes, happy Friday. Happy winter. Happy everything. Nice to see you all. Definitely. Thanks for joining by. This week, we will be talking about being honest about grieving a loved one. So let's talk about some disclaimers first. The reason we're talking about this is because there's a lot of people who have lost people in their families this year, last year, the year before, because of different things. You know, there's COVID, there's just lots of family turmoil. So I think it's definitely a topic that needs to be talked about. I'm excited to be able to talk with it about you, and here with Leonardo, she's going to be able to help and give her perspective. We invite any of you to come on and ask your questions about grieving. If you guys have any questions about if you're doing it right, and also the spiritual aspects of it, like, you know, like what does the spiritual world work or anything like that, those are answers that we can definitely give you. So before and after this, if you have any questions about that or you want to tell your story, feel free to leave it in the comments. So this week I released a video on Wednesday, just giving the basic tips on grieving a loved one. So let's talk about us. We are past life therapists. So we've been studying past lives and past life regression for the past good 10 to 12 years.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Just about. So we've been very experienced in seeing the spiritual world, seeing how things function, especially recently with the recent passings of my family. I've been able to see, you know, how spirituality works in those instances up close and personal. And it's been quite a, enlightening experience. So it's definitely some things I've learned and I love to share with you guys. So for us, what we teach is past life therapy, and we also have past life readings and stuff. But generally, we're spiritual people, and we don't really function with any religion.
That's very, very important to notice that when we talk about grief, death, where, you know, the soul goes after, at least from my perspective, I believe that every religion has a truth in it, and not one religion has one truth. And with all the knowledge, it's also your own experience. And I would just say that because apart from my experiences since my childhood, seeing spirits or even experiencing death in my family, even when, because I have studied supposed to be a nurse and I worked in a hospital. And so I experienced many people dying in the hospital. It was like, at least in the beginning, it was traumatic, right? Mm-hmm. But I got my own experience there. And then I was also looking, forward to learning more about what exactly is happening during death, how to grieve properly. And I would just say that I looked also into many religions. I read many books. But in the end of the day, I just realized it's about how I feel and what resonates to me.
True. So my experience is as well, I've definitely dabbled in a bunch of religions, especially in my college days. It depends. I never really followed any specific religion. I still don't. Hey, Jasmine, welcome.
Hey, Jasmine.
So with the belief of the afterlife, it's kind of up in the air. It depends on what you believe. But what's something that connects us all is just how we grieve and how we understand about the soul and how we love people. So that's something we'll definitely discuss and talk about today. That's kind of like what we function under is there is a spiritual world, clearly. That's something that we can all agree on. There's a spiritual world that people have souls, for instance, where, you connect with someone and you feel like that soul lives on. We all have a belief about that. And so we want to talk about the psychological aspects, and then we're going to talk about spiritual aspects that we understand and tips specifically from me from the video, and then we're going to have Luna's amazing advice as well.
Hi, Sharon.
Hey, Sharon, welcome. So at any point, if any of you are going through some things and you want to discuss, if you have any questions, feel free to just write them down. We'll stop what we're talking about and we'll discuss with you. We are here to help you with your coping as well. And if you have any questions about like how to do it right, we're here to answer that. So feel free at any time, okay? So we talked about the 5 stages of grief in psychology. The first stage is denial and isolation. So grieving, specifically for me, it's been an interesting experience where like I had to be like, damn, I don't know if that's real or if it's fake or it feels like it's not happening. It's something that I've seen very common in my family, specifically when my mother passed. It was very common to talk and be like, wow, this doesn't feel like it's actually happening. And to me, I feel like that's that first step that, you know, we took when we went through this stage of like denial and not understanding what's actually going on. Because it's difficult when someone it feels like they just disappear.
Yeah.
So that is something I definitely relate to. It's hard when you lose someone and then you feel like it just feels like there's like an emptiness, you know, so.
Especially with someone, you know, who you just didn't talk on the phone the previous day, or you had, you know, plans for the holidays or the weekend, or, you know, you said, but I just saw that person, they were just there, and then all of a sudden they're just gone.
It's true. It's true, 100%. So it's definitely something that I've went through, and I can definitely empathize with the struggles. But to me, with this first stage of grief, I wanted to share that my tip was extinguishing denial by communicating my pain. So, you know, for instance, I would try to strike up conversations like we're striking right now. I think it's important to have these conversations about grief, because if you don't talk about it, it doesn't become real, because it's like a community thing. It's everybody.
Yeah.
When somebody passes away, an entire family feels it, you know? Everybody feels it. So everyone has their own perspective, and everyone's feeling it inside their head. So when you don't really ask, they'll never tell. So you gotta just, you know, go up to them and ask them how they're feeling so that you can sort of gauge how they're feeling and if they need your help. But I have seen that healing best when you're in that first stage where you're in denial is best to just someone to take the initiative and speak. You know, like it's important to just speak when it's relevant and to ask questions, because everyone in the grieving process, us, we tend to stay silent about how we feel, and then now until someone asks us, how are you feeling, then it becomes something, but it's a release and it's necessary. So that's definitely denial and isolation. Handling it is definitely about learning how to communicate your feelings. And it seems so simple, but when it comes to grief, it almost like it shuts you down, you know, so.
Yeah, I also do feel that when it comes to denial and isolation is when people try to help you when you're that stage, and it's like, hey, do you need help? Are you doing okay? There's also the denial of help. And that personal isolation where you say, no, I'm okay. I don't need you. I'm okay.
Oh, yeah.
And kind of like, oh, you don't really understand what I'm going through. So how would you give me advice? How would you approach me? You don't know what's going on, really. You don't know how I feel. And
That's true.
And I feel that at that point, I mean, I know we're going to go to the stage about anger, frustration, but it's also about the part that when family members or even people you haven't talked for a long time, all of a sudden they just start calling you, texting you, asking, how are you doing? And that makes you even more, you know, feeling the sense where you want to isolate. You're like, so now you remember that I exist?
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Jennifer. Thank you so much for being here. Hi, beautiful.
Hello. Nice to meet you.
And so this is the point where you say, you know, do I really need you in my life right now? As if I have that pain and I'm just like, I don't even know what's going on. And on the top of that, I have people I haven't talked to for so long just showing up out of nowhere. And they try to get my attention. Yeah,
I think when there's a grieving process, it's important to not be too pushy, but to be there as a support blanket. It's a careful balance. Yeah. And recently we did that with a few family members of mine, where we've had to come together to support each other, even though it's awkward, but to do it in a way that is supportive, like we'll be here if you need us, we're still here if you need us, so that people don't feel like you're overarching their boundaries. I think it's very key to understand that when someone close to them passes away, you help them express their pain, and that's the most that you can do. Don't blame yourself. You feel like you can't do more. But so number 2 on the stage of grief is a lot of anger, dipped in frustration. Lots of things that I felt. Not too much anger because I'm a very spiritual person, so I understand that death is a very natural thing, and I deal with it all the time. I see spirits myself, so it's not completely scary, but I know when I was a kid and I saw my first death, it was groundbreaking for me. It was shocking. It was scary. I would think I was like 7. It was scary when someone died and I didn't know what to do, but nowadays I can see in other people there's a lot of frustration, a lot of like anger to the fact that, when someone leaves your life, what happens afterwards? What do they leave you? Do they leave you problems, solutions, or leave you with pain? It's almost like a pain of, feeling left behind. That's how I see it.
Yeah. Another thing that I remember when my, I have 2 experiences with anger and frustration. So, when I was working at the hospital, at that time, there was one of the ladies I was very, very close to. She was like one of my favorite patients, right? So I would just go every morning and I would just say hi to her. I would just have conversations, about her children, her grandchildren. And so she passed. And actually the nurses there, they wanted me to be in the room with her. They knew the connection they had with her, and they say, oh, you need to grow up, you need to mature, you need to be a nurse. And a nurse is supposed to be, to suck it up. And you just have to sit there and just, endure all this.
Yeah.
And I felt really angry because I was put in a situation if I didn't want to. And I also felt angry, frustrated. So what's happening? And then I just thought it was maybe an isolated event. But when I experienced it with my grandpa also, when he passed, 2 years later after that incident, I was so angry, especially when people were saying my condolences in the church. I couldn't even hear them. I went out. I went outside the church and I said, I don't want to hear it. And I couldn't even understand why I'm angry, but was really angry. And I told him, why you left? Why? So that was like the big question. Why you left me? Why now? Oh, yeah. What did I do something wrong? And there was like so many questions at once.
Oh, definitely. We'll definitely get to those. So my tip, specifically with the experiences I just went through, is being able to physically release your emotions and frustrations and just to get it out. So to take the initiative to, cry it out is a way. Working out, punching a punching bag, getting that frustration out, taking a run, a hug. A hug is a good way. So the thing with grieving is it's like a heavy weighted blanket gets on your body and you feel this sensation, and it's important for you when you're grieving to be able to push that weight off so that you can think clearly.
Yeah.
And we'll explain more soon as to why that feels that way, but it's like that. So whenever you get to that stage, definitely apply that logic where you have to physically get yourself up, physically start doing stuff. You have to keep rolling. You gotta keep moving when you're grieving, because if you don't, you fall into depression really quickly. And it's important that you don't, especially to honor the dead. You have to keep moving. You have to keep going. So that's something that I've definitely learned. I knew, and I learned even more now. So 3 is an interesting, yes. Definitely.
Hi, Mena.
Hey, Mena. So by the way, all of you new people, thanks for stopping by. If you have any input about different things that you went through when you were grieving and different tips, feel free to let them loose, okay? So 3, bargaining with the higher power. So this is about that part in the grieving process where you ask, why did this happen? Why do I deserve this? If only I can change something. If only I can do something that could have changed all that. If only I could have went and, did something different that day and they still be alive.
Yeah.
Why God? Why can't you, switch places with me and them? Like, it's this process where we start to ask super big questions and you go through this internal dialogue, and that's like slippery slope leads to depression quickly if you don't handle it properly. My personal tip on that is to be able to express yourself through pain, express that pain through writing, express that pain through music, drawing, art. I feel like art, because when in that stage of grieving, when you're past the frustration, you're past like getting really like hyped up, you start to hit a downward spiral. And then at that point, what you want to do is you want to then, before you hit the ground, you want to lift yourself up and use art to your advantage. And that's my personal advice, because when you are suffering, you want to be able to use art to lift yourself up out of that depression before you hit it. And so for me, it was writing. Hey there. So for me, it was writing and just writing down my feelings, writing down letters to my own mother, writing down things and saying goodbye in different ways. Those things help. And that's a very big suggestion. You know, my sister, she did a lot of art, which she still does to this day. The art is helping. It helps you get your emotions out. And with art of any kind, music, if you want to just do finger painting, you want to do any type of art, it feels good. It feels really good. And I would highly suggest that before depression hits, when you're actually grieving. It's important.
Yeah, I would just say about the part of number 3, where you bargain with a higher power. There are so many emotions there too, because the blame game starts. It's either your fault that you did something wrong. Maybe perhaps someone else did something wrong. So you try to find what exactly caused that. Because you say, did I do something wrong and I made the person die? Or did someone else was neglectful, right? Or did God even, just took that person for no reason? So there is the blame being thrown around. And I feel that art is a good place to start to express those emotions. Mm-hmm. I also remember for me, what helped me a lot was martial arts, or like just punching a bag. And so get the anger out, get it out. Another way, you can just go for running, walking. I know that Simone likes hiking. Hi, Simone. So anything that gets your energy out, because if you stay in that pool of emotions, it starts drowning you down. And then at the top of that, before you begin to depression, things start playing out into your mind, where when the person passed, how they passed, and the what ifs. What if I did this? What if I did that? What if I have changed that? And so that energy needs to go somewhere, because the more that you hold it in, the more it starts growing like a tree. And so from one question, now you have 50 questions with no answers.
Yes, which is, again, to the key point, you want to definitely communicate your pain when you're grieving.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who you're grieving, if it's big or small, if it's even grieving losing a friend. It's important to just communicate it. Talk to someone about it, whether it be a family member, a friend, or even us, if you want to just discuss it. Feel free. That's fine, because we all need to talk to somebody about, what we're feeling. And it's key. It's more vital than you think. So definitely. Hey, yeah, definitely. Hiking is definitely a thing. It can work.
Yeah.
So definitely. So the fourth part of grieving is depression. So once you hit that slope of the questioning with, higher power and questioning with yourself, the worst part is when you get into that depressive stage. And for me, when I was grieving, I went from number 1 straight to number 4. And that happens for a lot of people, where like I didn't even question the frustration. I didn't bargain anything, because I knew that what has to happen has to happen. And I've been in this business long enough to see that when spirits pass, there's a reason for it. And you don't have to fight it. You just have to understand that there's reasons for everything, and all you can do is show love. So I went straight to 4, which was depression. And I was like, this is just sad. And I kept it all to myself, obviously, because that's what I do. And then she's like, if you want to talk about it, we can talk about it. And I'm like, I don't talk.
And then he went like back to number 1 and 2. Yep. So from the 4, he jumped back, to the cycle where denial, isolation, anger, frustration. So you did 1 and 2.
Yeah, it was super difficult, but I definitely took some strides to be able to move forward and allow family to heal the wounds that opened up.
Yeah.
Because it was difficult. And it was difficult, first with my grandfather, then my mother. I'm like, that's difficult.
Yeah.
So the problem is, I know that I'm going to be okay because I have a good support system with my family and my friends. But other family members are not always going to be okay. So I was just more worried about them. So I tend to do that where I'll deflect healing from myself and I'll just go heal somebody else. But in these processes, you kind of ignore your own feelings. So to me, my best tip when you feel really, really down and you feel that heavy weighted feeling when you're depressed because you felt like someone has passed, is to create new happy moments so you can conquer that depression. So for instance, I still do this to this day with my family. We try our best to create happy moments whenever we can. So I just try to bring that happiness back to my life and understand that this is sort of what she would have wanted. And it's proper to do that in order to show that there's strength and there's solidarity in it. And you have to be able to stick with it, to stick with being strong in that grieving process and to not be afraid to implement happiness into your life, whether it be as simple as cat videos.
Yeah.
Or if it be as complicated as, taking a trip outside of the city for a little bit,
Yeah.
So anything that really makes you happy. I think that when you're in that depression, make a list of things that really make you smile and ask someone to take you on that list because when someone passes, you don't have to feel like the world is ending. You just have to be able to be strong enough to understand that your world continues. So yeah, definitely. Mena said, I felt I need lots of support when I lost my dad and brother. Oh, absolutely.
Definitely.
And it's hard to show that, especially when there's drama in families.
Yeah.
Ooh, it just gets in the way. So I definitely empathize with that. To be able to express that you need support, it's hard to do because sometimes you don't want to talk to the people. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you're a quiet person, introverted. I myself am very introverted. So... like you and me, Mena, we're both spiritual people, right? We both, run in those types of circles. And we both know that spirituality dives straight into, the world of death and the afterlife. But it's like, to be able to see it and to be able to function it is two different things. And it takes strength to be able to say, I need help. And that's something that I'm not good at all. So what I do instead of saying I need help is I create situations in which I get the help. So for instance, I won't say I need help, but I'll say those people need help and we need to get together. So I do it indirectly, but it happens regardless. And I said, and I felt the anger when I didn't get the support from my relatives. It's definitely sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
It's definitely a harsh.
I can relate to that. I wanted to share my experience when my grandpa passed because it was really big for me. He was 65 when he passed, and he was like very, very young. Okay. And it was like a shock to everyone because it was what was it? Cardiac arrest as well. Mm-hmm. And he would just like one day like we talked to him, next day he was just like gone. And so I realized at that time that many of the family members didn't show up at all. And some didn't show to the funeral. So that, creates already a drama situation, right? When you're grieving, you know that the people that you want are not there. And then I also realized for me afterwards that kind of like the family fell apart. And I was wondering, so what is the point of visiting my home anyway? Because, everyone is fighting and he was the only reason for me going there in a sense to visit. And I felt that everything fell apart. So I'm like, what is the point? So the hopelessness, I just like went just right there and it just sank. And it felt like all these emotions, dread, sadness, anger. So I was experiencing all these stages from 1 to 4. And the last one I'm going to talk about is the acceptance. I never accepted the loss till 5 years later. it took me a long time because no one supported me through that process, to grieve. And so I would just repeat it from 1 to 4 for 5 years.
That makes lots of sense. It's similar to me because I went straight to depression quickly. I was like, forget everything else because there's no fighting it. There's no denying it. I understand the afterlife. I can't deny nothing. I can't be a hypocrite and teach things. So I move forward. But I can definitely tell you that my best tip when it comes to grieving on your own when your family doesn't support you, actually all the tips all together. Because then you have to take the initiative to take care of yourself and to be able to make a plan. Maybe take the 5 steps of grief in psychology and exactly what I did. Create a chart and create a list of things that you can do to fulfill that in your own way. And so, because for me, it's, just expressing pain, doing art, being able to, punch a punching bag, to be able to force happy moments where things that make me happy and just to affirm every single day. So this was a list of 5 ways that I grieved on my own, and I did it on my own because I do everything on my own because I'm just a stubborn person, but it's definitely not impossible. If you want help with that list, definitely reach out. If any of you need help with that grieving list, because I think we all need that list. Everyone does it differently.
And then I saw that Sharon said, she said, yes, talking about it helps be different stages of grieving. It's not easy until you're ready. Yes, remember the happy times with your past loved ones is the key. An interesting thing that I noticed that, especially because with your mom is very, very fresh, right? And the memories are still there.
Yeah.
And so, we had like a very, very nice Thanksgiving, right? It was like amazing. We had like a great time. And so when I tried to remember her, then I started rolling backwards. So I went from like when I was about to accept the loss, I went back to depression, hopelessness. So okay, I remember the happy moments and then it went back. So why did she have to go back to 3 and then back to 2? And then I getting frustrated and angry. And I didn't know why I was angry. Then I was back to undenial. I'm like, did it even happen? Is it even real? And then I just didn't want to talk about it. So kind of like it rolled backwards. So sometimes in the beginning when you try, because many people suggest that remember the happy moments, right? But for some people, it doesn't work the same. And although the stages are the same, each one of us grieves a different way. So for me, when I tried to remember the happy moments, it rolled backwards. So from the stage 5, it went all back to the 1. As if like from 1 to 10 in like 2 seconds, the moment that I had the memory of his mom.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's true. And then that's something to point out because we're about to do number 5. Like everybody has their own way of grieving. So if you or your friends need a way of grieving, do the same practice. You take the 5 steps of grief and then you write above it, below it, beside it, in between it. You sort of fill up the gaps because there's so much to be put in there based on your personality. And again, we'd help for sure. And I feel your pain, Ginevra. I do the same. I do everything on my own.
Simone said, Bell Proctor died today. I actually saw that on my newsfeed and I was like in shock.
She said, I'm devastated. Thank you. I really needed this. Yeah. So I'm sorry for your loss.
It's like he was like a great, great teacher. And it's like I was in shock. And when I said, I'm like, wow.
Yeah, definitely. It's a hard loss for all of us. So definitely condolences. But yes, and you're right, Mel. It's different for everyone, but bouncing around the cycle is important. So let's talk about number 5, and we'll talk about that bouncing as well.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. So number 5, the last stage of grieving seems like the end, but not always the end, is acceptance of the loss. It's the part when you actually start to get through and start to have resolve in your grieving. Well, definitely for me, it was not as easy as that. So I skipped everything, went straight to depression because the denial was over. And I basically said to myself that I need to learn how to accept this. And therefore, I'm going to have to create sort of a habit to reaffirm that she has passed. Because when my mother had passed, it wasn't even real. It was like, because it was a sudden death, so it was like, that's not real. So in order to understand that, yeah, she definitely passed, so I need to move forward for other people, and I also need to move forward for her. And therefore, I did basically a daily habit where I reaffirmed that she is in another, realm or state of existence, and also to make steps and make trips, make like a list of things to do to honor her memory, and which is a big reason why I even started this spiritual health initiative this year. Because of her, I started this, because this is something I've been sitting on for like a whole year. I've been trying to get the courage to be able to create a video series based on spiritual health and wellness, and to create, these episodes that we're creating now. And it wasn't until I started to think, how am I going to accept this loss? And when I started to piece it together, I thought to myself, well, the only thing that I can do is do exactly what she would have said, which is do what you love and do what makes you happy. So I was like, all right, well, I have to do what makes me happy. Then I'm going to do it. And I got the strength and I did it. So it's my way, my personal way of accepting the loss is taking the actions and the steps to accept and affirm that my life honors that person that has passed. So to live like you are honoring that person affirms it, and it helps you accept that, it happened. And it helps you not have to go back into the depression. And that's sort of how I did it. I took this big step to do all this, so it's very relevant. But one point to make is that it's normal to go through the stages of grief and have to go back through the cycle again and again. Yeah. There's small cycles, big cycles. There's daily cycles. You can go through a whole day denying that someone has gone out of your life, whether it be a loved one, an ex-lover, an ex-wife, a cousin. It could be anything that leaves your life. And you can go through the grieving stages every day again and again. So that's definitely normal. There's nothing wrong with it at all.
Might have said...
Oh, sorry. Yes, it was... Oh, wait. Oops. Oh, wow. Okay, hold on. Oh, the comments...
Well, she said, I see them in my dreams and that comforts me a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that helps a lot because you just still have that communication with them, through your dreams, and it makes total sense. And Mena and Mel, they both said that thank you for sharing and keep with the amazing videos.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we'll be doing it the entire year at least. I think that it is important. I want to bring up, good topics that we all need to discuss, like relationship stuff, because we love to talk about relationships because we've been doing relationship counseling for the past 10 years. But I think it's just tough topics, like 2 weeks ago when we did quarantine. So important. So important to talk about it, to create a safe space for people to discuss. And this topic is super, super important, especially at a time like this. I feel the void of person energy no longer on the planet. It throws life off. Yes.
It does.
Yeah, so let me explain to you. Oh, my God. Ugh. So, to me, the most difficult thing about grieving was, the fact that I'm spiritually inclined and I can't block anything out, and I can hear, voices from beyond. I can see past lives. I can see into other realms. I can do that, and I can't turn that off because I'm doing it all the time. And the other part of that was so difficult was the silence. Oh my God, it was so difficult. The void and the silence, because where they were, they're not. And something I want to discuss definitely after this, because it was just so hard. The silence of not hearing her voice suddenly, it was like, it was the weirdest silence. It's like you hear nothingness. And I was in shock of that. I was like, wow, I never felt such silence. It was too much silence. I'm like, that is so empty of a space. I have to start to figure out what that means, because it makes you question, what the hell does that mean? What does that mean about my life? What does that mean about them, me, what is the meaning of that? So that was super difficult. I went through that for like a good 2-3 weeks where I'm like, wondering the silence. It has started with the fact that I wasn't getting the calls that she would give me. I was like, oh my God, it's not there. So it was part of the denial part, but accepting the silence worked out as soon as I was able to start something like this, start a project, to help other people. Because then the silence stopped, because I filled up the silence with words that needed to be said. And I think that's the most important part about grief, is that there will be a silence. There's things that are not going to be talked about. You're not going to hear their voice anymore. You're not going to see them. You have to do something that you're proud of. And you have to fill that void with words that matter. So even if it's you going to volunteer your time to other people to help them grieve, or to volunteer your time to children, or just something to fill the void with good intention and love. And that itself is a healing process for me.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. And also, I was also trying to, I was seeing all these steps, and then they make total sense, because for me last year, I found out that I'm adopted. And so that was a whole grieving process of a whole family that I never had. And still grieving the parents that I never had. And I feel it's even more difficult because, when someone passes, they just pass. Mm-hmm. But I felt like I was somewhere in the middle. Am I gonna find them? Meanwhile, I'm still doing it. I'm still looking forward, to the moment where someone's gonna show up. It's like, hey, I'm your mother, I'm your father, we're family. And so there was that denial, there was that isolation, I was angry, and I was frustrated, and then again, the number 3, bargaining with a higher power, why I had to go through that, what happened exactly. And then depression, of course, it took me a whole year to get out of it. And acceptance, it hasn't happened yet, I will tell you that. I'm not there yet. Yeah. Because I can't accept something that I haven't really felt or seen, in a sense. So I'm still holding in the hopes. I'm going in those cycles from 1 to 4. Yeah,
and definitely assess that for yourself. When you lose, you feel like you lost a family, you lost a loved one. When you feel like you've lost, a friend, any grieving process that you're going through, and you feel a huge loss, definitely start to think about the process of healing and affirming your acceptances. I feel that it's definitely to create, beauty where there's chaos. You have to create, a good thing out of a bad thing. And it really, really helps. It helped for me, because I was able to teach people, now, even now in this moment, my tips so that we can all create a safe space for all of us to share how we're feeling. And it helps. It helps through helping others. I help myself, and it works for me.
Yeah,
but it doesn't work for everyone.
Not for everyone.
Everyone grieves differently.
Everyone grieves differently. So we just need, I would just say, to just understand that these 5 steps happen for grief, but each one of us has their own process. And it could be on a personal level, where you are in your life. Some people are religious, some people are just spiritual, some people are not religious or spiritual. And then also depends, on your culture, where you grew up, how you were taught to grieve. That's so big, because from your society, you're being expected to grieve in a specific way.
Yes, let's talk about that. So cultural influences on grieving practices, because we made a list here, which we're going to talk about now. And you guys can add your opinions in as well. Besides these 5 basic steps of grieving, there's so many things in the middle that we all go through, and we want to sort of bring it out to the surface and tell you the spiritual perspective from our eyes. But it's true. Cultural influences, how you were taught to grieve. If you were born into the church and they taught you how to grieve, and the practices and rituals of that. If you were born into any other religion, how they taught you to grieve. That's so important, because you have to decide, is it culturally acceptable to grieve in this way or that way? and you could tell us how you were, taught to grieve, because it's different.
Yeah. For example, in Greece, apart me for Christianity itself and has its own rituals, also the cultural part of it. Oh yeah, men are so right. I was about to say that the men are not supposed to cry, not even in the funerals. And I remember that so very well. Women, you can just cry. Men, they're not supposed to cry. But there is that other thing where you're being guilt tripped. I won't forget that. So, especially for women, when a man in the family passes who's very close, could be like husband, could be father, could be grandfather, so someone who's very close, you are supposed, like as a woman, to be wearing black clothes for at least 1 year. But if it was like a husband, or a father, it could just take up to 5 years to wear these clothes. And you're not supposed to be seen outside in public to be smiling. You're not supposed to be listening to music. Wow. You're not supposed to be doing happy activities. When people see you smile, they say, how dare they? They should be ashamed for smiling. The father just passed, or the mother just passed, or the family just passed like a couple months ago or a year ago. How dare they smile like that? Don't they grieve? I don't think they grieve. I think they were happy that the person passed. And then there's like the gossip mentality where it goes around and eventually goes to the person's ears. Yeah. Oh yeah, there you go. So it's like a very, like Mena said, it's a very, very, I would say, Eastern culture and how I guess we deal with death. But there is the stigma, literally, where you have to be in a specific way. You're not supposed to be wearing color clothes. And at home, I remember my stepmother, she never played music for, like, all the time I remember, like, listen, like, to music, since forever, and then there's no music, there's just silence. So you have the person missing the silence, plus the whole silence at home. No one was talking.
That's traumatic.
Everyone was crying. Yeah.
That's traumatic. I think that, we're in a global world now, and we're all, sort of meshed. And I think that we need to basically reassess what's healthy for the mind and the soul, because it's not right.
Yeah.
For instance, for me, when my mom had passed, my dad was like, wear black. And I was like, you know what? No, I'm going to wear what I want, blue, because I love wearing blue.
But it was her favorite color too, though.
Yeah, it was her favorite color too. So, whatever. And so I just did what I wanted, because it's what made me happy. It would have probably made her happy, because she's a rebel. So she did whatever that she wanted to do. So I was like, I'm just going to do whatever I want to do. And so just things like that, small assertions of your pride and your dignity. You have to be able to, whatever you were brought up and how you were supposed to grieve, you have to question, is this right? Is this not right? And sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But it's okay. It's okay for you to question how you were brought up to grieve. It's okay to do it differently. It's okay. And it's definitely okay not to be okay. Let's be real with that. So Ginevra said, my mom passed away just before Christmas. I wonder what happened if they had unfinished business. My mom was a person who didn't show her grief. You must get over it quickly. Just ask us to be happy when she passed. She knew it was close and I accepted it, but still very emotional. We talk about many happy times, and we all wore green, and she wanted happy colors, not black. That's cool. Definitely. Yeah, sorry for your loss. Because same for me. Losing my mother was beginning of December.
Yeah, it was like 2 weeks before Christmas.
Yeah, it was like really, really recent.
She asked, so I wonder what happens if they had unfinished business.
Yes, let's talk about that. So mixing with the cultural influences about grieving practices. Okay, here's my spiritual perspective. Grieving practices are rituals. And yeah, definitely. Grieving practices are rituals. Everything to revolve around grieving and death is rituals. Even when you're told to pray, over a casket, when you're told to synchronistically pray for someone, these are rituals. A ritual is when people put their energy to a specific use. Okay? Rituals have a bad rep where it's like people think rituals are like devil stuff and Satanist stuff. Not necessarily. Rituals, like when people do a prayer circle, that's a ritual. It's when people put their energy together to make one thing. When they put their energy to change something energetically, it's a ritual. And the problem that I have with a lot of grieving practices is when people hold on to the dead too often, because of their daily rituals. So like some people will pray to the dead every single day for a year. They'll hold their clothes for a year until they burn them or something like that. The problem is what we understand about past lives and the afterlife is some souls do have unfinished business. Some souls don't. But when a soul passes on to the next, to the realm outside of ours, there are beings that help them with that. Like, it doesn't matter which religion it is. In Christianity, they have angels. In Buddhism and Hinduism, they have the Devi, and they have, the different realms in which people are assisted in the afterlife. In Egyptian mythology, they have, Anubis and the entire priesthood where they help them get through the gates. Like, it's all the same. And every religion is all similar, but there's truth to it. Because there's assistance, there's help, and just like in this lifetime, we have spiritual guides. You have spiritual guides to the afterlife too. So whenever you feel that somebody has unfinished business, they might, but there's somebody helping them. If you feel you're supposed to do something about it, that's because somebody around you or yourself is doing something to hold them back. You shouldn't have to worry about somebody's unfinished business because every karma is usually individual. And as soon as someone passes on, that karma disconnects. So it no longer affects you. So the way it works is also in astrology, when your planets are affected by other people's planets, depending on your orientation when you were born, once that person passes, you are now an individual and you're no longer affected by their presence. You have to understand what that void is. But their presence now is in another dimension. It's in another place. And they will go through their moments. But I could tell you that if someone was stuck in limbo and they're stuck and you don't know why, well, then it's probably because they did something to get there. And it's not my business to say. But definitely, if you feel that someone has unfinished business, all you can do is sort of like meditate on it, try to understand how you can help the process where they can move forward. All you want to do for a soul is to move forward. And that's the best that we can do. I just feel like, oh, you're welcome. I just feel like it's not necessary to hold on to the dead for too long because it does hinder their process in the afterlife. That's all I can say. No matter what belief system you run under, the afterlife is the afterlife. And it's whatever you make of it. And it's whatever you believe. But energy, if you hold on to it, it can't move. So whenever you're grieving someone, you can grieve for a while, but at some point you have to start letting go. Because not for your sake, but for their sake. So if you have like an altar dedicated to them, that's beautiful. But make sure that it's an altar of remembrance, not an altar of trying to pull that person closer to you. You don't have to do that. After like about a month, it's time to let them go. Because then their soul needs to go through their trial in the afterlife. And they have to go through what they're going to go through. And you cannot hold that back because if you hold a piece of them, they can't move on. And then you're just hindering the process because of your own pain. And that's not how you're supposed to live your life. So that's my advice about rituals when it comes to grieving. And because we all want to be respectful of the people who have passed and let them move forward. Because if they don't move forward, then you should feel at fault. But if you let them move forward, you're okay.
Yeah, I just feel that the grieving process is also about we grieve the physical image of the person. And this is why we hold so much to it. Because we hold to the habits. We hold to the connection to them. We hold to how they show themselves up into our lives. So we remember them as a physical representation of the soul. But then we forget to look around us to understand that they are around in their own way. And because we have expectations, it's either how we were taught from our society, how we're taught from the religious system we're following, or from the spiritual system we're following, because there's also like spiritual system that people do follow, right?
Yeah.
And so also from your experiences, the way that you hold on the person, you're not able to see around you. So let's say you want to see one of your ancestors or a person who just passed, and they goes, where are you? And you might see like a bird just flying past you, right? And you don't even pay attention to, because you also have expectations. So let's say I expect them to show up maybe as a spirit leader, like in front of me, or let's say they liked a specific food and you want to smell that food as if in a presence or a perfume that they had. But because we're talking about energy, the person is going to be around, because remember, when you have that connection with them, they love you. And those emotions and that connection that you have, it doesn't go away. It just transforms. And because with our physical eyes, we cannot see, we just feel that this connection is gone.
The biggest thing that I want you guys to take from this, and even all of you that are watching this back later on, is that grieving, in order to finish grieving, you need to celebrate it. Celebrate the person that has passed or left your life. You are basically done grieving, and you're now in a very proper cycle when you start celebrating someone's memory and living in their honor. So for instance, doing this video series this year is a celebration of myself and how far I've come, but also a celebration of the influence of my mother, influencing me to help other people the way she did, because she would always help people her entire life selflessly. So a selfless person inspiring a person to be selfless. You see that? So I'm working in honor of somebody, celebrating them every single week. So instead of, let's say monthly or yearly, you have like a get together or a dinner for the dead, right? Or like a ritual. Try not to hold on to the person, but to remember the person, to celebrate their memory. It's the most beautiful thing. It's a blessing. It brings good karma. You have no idea. But when you grieve that person once a year, that hurts. It hurts everybody involved. Hurts them, hurts you, hurts everybody. But when you learn how to celebrate them, celebrate their memory, all good. Everything's good, because it turns grieving into a positive. And you can absolutely get large places if you could just do that. And that's something I want you guys to learn and to be inspired to do. And it's very interesting. So with the time that we have left, if you guys have any questions, feel free. We're going to tell you some things that we've noticed within the 5 stages of grief that we noticed that are very important. To me, number one is like the shock of the death. Before denial comes shock. Because every time someone dies, it's like that energy that hits you?
Yeah.
Boom. And you feel that heavy energy in your heart. That's that shock. And especially with sudden deaths, complete shock. And I think that that's something that is to be prepared and expected for, is someone can't even begin to grieve unless they already got through the shock. And I noticed that recently with family members. The shock can last very long before they even get to step 1 of grieving.
Yeah.
The shock can make someone hit depression before they even hit denying that the person's gone. So whenever someone's grieving around you, or you're grieving yourself and you feel that shock, definitely try not to do anything sporadic, try not to do anything chaotic or crazy. Just relax, focus, and let it flow. Because the shock can make you do insane things before you even start grieving. So that's something I noticed. I just want people to be careful for. It comes before stage 1. And 2, memories of in your dreams or your daydreams. I've had plenty of those. So many dreams of my mom, like there as if nothing happened. I think that that's a mixture of her communicating maybe, or a mixture of her memories in my subconscious. These are going to happen. And you want to allow for them to teach you lessons, not for you to wake up and feel like, oh, I'm so sad. Not really. I think that when the dreams come to you, or when you're daydreaming in the middle of the day and then you think about them, you start remembering memories, that's a good thing. it can be a good thing as long as you honor their memory in those moments. Like, wow, that was a good memory. I should learn from that. That was a beautiful thing. I should learn from that. And I think that that can really get you far. Number 3 is acknowledging the void that they leave behind, which we talked about earlier with Mel.
Yeah.
Acknowledging that void is so important. You have to look, like, energetically look at the fact that they're not there. Huge void. And you have to acknowledge that, yeah, they're not there. They're somewhere else. And you have to come to terms with that. I feel like that's definitely almost stage 1 and also stage 5, back and forth, where you're denying that it even happened, but you're accepting that it happened. Go through that process of accepting that. And then 4, living with regret of what could have been.
Yeah.
I think that that's definitely something we should discuss. Living with regret is hard because it raises questions about the meaning of life, which causes people to be very, very depressed.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about it. I think, what was it, number 3, when you start questioning, the higher power and
you think that you're stuck on number 3.
Yeah,
That's correct.
yeah. What if this happened? What if that happened? What if I did this differently? And regretting, I wish I had dinner with them, before they pass, or I wish when they call me, I should just went home and just visit them, or maybe I should just go, holidays with them, or whatever plans you potentially could have. And I feel that it's a really big one, that one. And it doesn't say much about them, but it says about you. And it says about you so as to where you were with them in your connection. So, for example, let's say that you didn't have a really, really good connection, and let's say with a person who passed, you would just like, I would rather not see them, just, maybe like once a month, and then they passed, and it's like, oh, I wish I saw them more than once. Where you need to ask yourself, where does it really come from? And you don't need to feel guilty if you actually were not as much connected as you wished you did. And that is okay. Just because they passed, it doesn't make you a bad person for not connecting with them earlier. It just, the connection was not there anyway. So I feel like that's what most people are stuck with. Like, I wish we did things, I wish I saw them more often, but there was a reason why you didn't see them as often.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because as she had explained before my mom had passed, we had so many plans that week.
Oh yeah.
And it was like, it was hard to accept that void because she just disappeared.
Yeah.
And it was like, it was shocking because it was like, wait, we had so many plans within a 7-day period, and it just stopped. And me and my family, it was difficult, but we got we got courage. We had the strength to go and fulfill some of those plans on our own in her honor, which was very strong of them. And we tried our best, but to live with that regret, I couldn't. I mean, I regretted it. I regretted so much, especially at the funeral and stuff. Like, I was like, oh, I regret this and that, but I got over it because I understood exactly what Luna explained, which is things happen for a reason. And if you didn't have a connection with them for a time, that happened for a reason. You don't have to blame yourself for the death of somebody else, and you don't have to blame yourself. What could you have done, and should you have did this? Learn from it. Learn from it, grow from it, and reach out to people that you love and cherish. Every time someone passes in this life, it's a big lesson for everybody. Life is very, very short. Very short. And you need to spend your time in your life doing something meaningful. Otherwise, you got to ask, what am I here for? So whenever you're wasting time, ask yourself that, what can I do that's more meaningful? What can I do to bring beauty to my life, my friends, my family? And that will help you out for sure. So let's see, with the time we have left, we're going to discuss the last concept, which is connecting with spirit and its legacy. So ways to communicate with people who have moved on. Well, I'm a spiritual medium. Don't do it quite often, but I do it. Like in my readings, spirits do come through if they have to. I'm a firm believer that if it has to happen, it has to happen. I don't look for it, but when the lesson needs to be taught, it needs to be taught. If something needs to be said, it has to be said. And I do it if it needs to be done. I don't seek it, because when you seek it, it can get too much. And but there are ways that you can communicate with those who have passed, the memory of them, communicate with them right before they move on to whatever life they're supposed to live in the afterlife. We'll tell you a little bit about that, because there are definitely healthy ways, like the one I talked about, celebrating their life.
Yeah,
very healthy way. Even in creating this video series, I'm communicating with my mom in it. I'm communicating with her energetically, where I am allowing her lessons to live on through me. That's a way of communicating with the dead. You don't have to do it directly. You can do it indirectly. You don't have to do it completely right there. And that's something that people don't quite understand. They feel locked out. They're like, oh, I can't talk to my mom anymore. And not really. Her memory lives on in you always. Her genetics are in you always. You can always communicate with her, because she's more than just her voice. She's more than just her soul. She is the entire memory that she left, the entire legacy she left. That's how you communicate with the spirit very easily.
And there's so many different ways to communicate. For me, I'm clairaudient, so I do hear the spirits talk. Sometimes I don't see them, but I hear them. So, for example, when his mom passed, for at least a week or so, I was in constant communication with her. She was explaining to me what happened, how she feels, and there was one thing that she kept saying, Luna, keep smiling, and I'm in a good place. You don't need to feel bad about me. And so it started slowly fading as I was in the process of also acceptance. But there are so many ways to communicate with those who have passed. Some people just expect, I have to see the spirit. Some people say I need to, just hear the spirit. It could be so many ways. So let's say maybe you feel weird energy around your body. Maybe you just feel you want to write something, automatic writing. You want to write a letter. Maybe through music. Let's say you're listening to a song and then the lyrics feels something that person who passed could have told you, or is a message from them. Maybe, animal spirits, animals that you see outside, wildlife, they could communicate with you. Maybe a person who just, you just met and you feel the energies are very close, to the person who just passed, who's close to you, and you say, this is something that, for example, my mom would have said, my dad would have said, that feels odd. And sometimes spirits talk through people. And they will get the message to you one way or another. You just need to be willing to listen or willing to accept.
That's very true, because though you're looking for a message from someone who has passed, sometimes those messages come through other people, through animals, through your friends. Like your friend will suddenly come up to you and be like, I just feel like you really need to stop dating that guy, or just, I think you should just be careful with, wearing a seatbelt in the car. Sometimes messages come through people, so just pay attention to your surroundings and allow for life to heal you in the process of grieving. And I said, yes, I heard my father telling me that my brother's going to him just 1 week before my brother died.
Wow.
Definitely. Yeah, when it's time, it's time. And when you hear it, you hear it, so it's true. Absolutely. So last thing I wanted to mention is the confusion with speaking to the dead, because it sort of connects with the thing I said about rituals, that you can't confuse healing and celebrating with grieving.
The grieving process.
Yeah, because you might, like I said, like the metaphor of the altar. If you create an altar to someone who has passed, that's beautiful. But it must become an altar of remembrance to honor them. But if you create an altar of emotional need and pain, and it gets bigger and bigger, you could only be holding them back. So whenever you're grieving, never confuse those two, grieving and celebrating somebody. And because it's very important to respect the dead and to respect the living as well. And I think that that's something that a lot of people don't know how to do. But if you ever have questions about it, just ask me. So it was a pleasure speaking to all of you today. Thanks for stopping by, all of you. Again, after this, if you have any comments and questions, feel free to let us know. We'd be happy to hear your stories. Thank you, Mena. Thank you, Flora. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your stories. Creating safe spaces like this for people to just talk about it, I think, is key. And we'll be doing that all year long.
Yeah. Another thing that I would like to mention before we close the live is that remember that our soul and the souls of your loved ones are infinite. And it's a very important thing to remember because people are getting stuck in the grieving cycle and they cannot just let go because they're grieving just the physical body. But remember, the soul exists as energy in many forms all around you. So let's say that you get a pet, right? And I mean, like Joy, right? She feels like a lot like your mom sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yeah, so you get a pet and that has the behavior, of your loved one. It could be very much be that the energy has returned back to you in a different form. So remember that your loved ones are always around you no matter what.
True. Yeah, definitely. So definitely thanks for watching. It was a great conversation to have with you guys. Very personal, but I'm glad I did it. It was very difficult for me, even though I don't show it. But, I got through it. Yeah. And you guys can get through it too. You can be strong and don't let death be the end of your life. You have to keep moving on. Keep moving forward and keep doing what you love. That's exactly what your loved ones would have wanted.
Yeah.
So we'll see you guys next week talking about love because Valentine's Day is coming.
Valentine's Day is coming, so we are ready for it.
Oh, yeah. We're going to talk about love. You'll see. All right. See you guys soon. Thanks for watching.
See you guys. Have a beautiful weekend.
All right. Bye.
Bye.